I have no idea if I am live right now or not. I have never done this. I am, unfortunately, something of a Luddite. You can tell because I have a 3-bit webcam, but it is Charles Dickens' birthday, and this is something that I have been considering doing for quite some time now, is a live type deal. So this will be interesting. Maybe it will not be. But five lives are something that I want to start doing on the channel for special occasions. Uh, so happens to be Charles Dickens' birthday. I wanted to do this a little while ago for there was a key date for World War One. It was the date where British soldiers were being conscripted. Started being conscripted, and I was going to go five live with that and do some of the trench poetry. Now, five live, what do I mean by five live? I will present 5 pages from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. This will be stave 4, but I figured this would be worth sort of rolling out for Charles Dickens' birthday in order at least to sort of get something figured out. I have never done this before, like I stated earlier. So, Charles Dickens' birthday, I'm going to read a little bit from the Wikipedia page on Charles Dickens. Born in Portsmouth, Dickens left school at the age of 12 to work in a boot blacking factory. 12 years old, he had a job. What were you doing at 12? Probably nothing productive. When his father John was incarcerated in a debtor's prison. Do you have a backstory as cool as that? I mean, is it any wonder that Charles Dickens did not end up being, in fact, a super villain? After 3 years, he returned to school before he began his literary career as a journalist. Many writers end up so it's strange. Many writers that end up with an underspoken presentation sort of begin their writing careers as journalists. Ernest Hemingway was a journalist. Chuck Palahniuk, I believe, went into journalism. I don't know that he was ever a journalist, but certainly went down that road. I say certainly, even though I believe that was the case. Dickens edited a weekly journal for 20 years, wrote 15 novels, 5 novellas, hundreds of short stories, and nonfiction articles, lectured and performed readings extensively, was an indefatigable letter writer, and campaigned vigorously for children's rights, for education, and for other social reforms. Now, possibly having been forced into labor at 12 years old will help you mold an indefatigable work ethic. And that is certainly what we got from Charles Dickens. The so I have only read one Charles Dickens. I have only read A Christmas Carol. It certainly made me want to read more Charles Dickens. So, hopefully, I will bring more Charles Dickens to the channel sometime in the future. Hopefully, not too distant future. If you have any Charles Dickens that you think that I should read, let me know that as well. Stave 4, The Last of the Spirits. This is again 5 live, which will be 5 pages from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol in honor of Charles Dickens' birthday. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the very air through which this spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. But for this it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night and separate it from the darkness by which it was surrounded. So, one of the things that Charles Dickens does there, which works to great effect, is that Charles Dickens is showing you things by taking away visuals. It was shrouded in a deep black garment which concealed its head, its face, its form. It left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. This is all you're looking at right there. That one outstretched hand is all you get. And because of that, it is a striking image. He felt that it was tall and stately when it came beside him, and that its mysterious presence filled him with a solemn dread. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved. Here, we are giving presence by removing movement. In the same way that we had previously sort of painted the picture of what this ghost of Christmas future is by taking away the visuals, we are giving this ghost presence by taking away the presence of things. "I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come," said Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed downward with its hand. "You are about to show me shadows of the things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us," Scrooge pursued. "Is that so, spirit?" The upper portion of the garment was contracted for an instant and for an instant in its folds, as if the spirit had inclined its head. That was the only answer he received. Although well used to ghostly company by this time, Scrooge feared the silent shape so much that his legs trembled beneath him, and he found that he could hardly stand when he prepared to follow it. The spirit paused a moment, as observing his condition and giving him time to recover. This is an extremely compelling observation from Dickens to me. Not that he was saying it to me, but I feel this is a very interesting detail. The fact that the ghost of Christmas future knows, oh, I'm super intimidating, baby, and is so sure of that the moment Scrooge, the intimidator in chief, the moment that Scrooge starts to stutter and stammer, the ghost of Christmas yet to come has mercy on him. He does not mean to be this terrifying. He simply is. He simply is this terrifying. This is his nature. He does not mean to have this effect on anyone. But Scrooge was all the worse for this. It thrilled him with a vague, uncertain horror to know that behind the dusky shroud there were ghostly eyes intently fixed upon him, while he, though he stretched his own to the utmost, could see nothing but a spectral hand and one great heap of black. Again, another where do you get the idea to include this detail? Where do you get the hubris as a writer to understand, yeah, not only am I going to make Scrooge terrified of this ghost, but I'm also going to make him, in his terror, terrified of his terror. He is going to be self reflective on the terrifying nature of the Ghost of Christmas Future, and he's going to he's going to have a moment of reflection, of meta terror, terror on terror. "Ghost of the future," he exclaimed, "I fear you more than any spectre I have seen. But as I know your promise is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear you company, and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me?" It gave him no reply. The hand was pointed straight before them. "Lead on," said Scrooge. "Lead on. The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me. I know. Lead on, spirit." The phantom moved away as it had come towards him. Scrooge followed in the shadow of its dress, which bore him up, he thought, and carried him along. They scarcely seemed to enter the city, for the city rather seemed to spring up about them, and encompass them of its own act. But there they were, in the heart of it, on change amongst the merchants, who hurried up and down, and chinked the money in their pockets, and conversed in groups, and looked at their watches, and trifled thoughtfully with their great gold seals, and so forth, as Scrooge had seen them often. This is, in my opinion, one of the most transcendent things about this novel. The fact that we have here a novel written 100 years before special effects in Hollywood. And Charles Dickens is sort of ideating how this would all happen. And it is that the ghosts, the spirits, lead Scrooge into a place, and all of a sudden, the world springs up around them. It sounds trivial, but it sounds trivial to our mindsets today. We've seen this a million times in movies. Pardon me. We have seen this type of special effect filter down into television. That is how simple these things have become in our society today. But this was not the case for Charles Dickens. Pardon me, I cannot get rid of this cough. In Dickens' time, the only thing that they would have had close to television, to the movie theater, would have been plays. And you literally have to stop everything in a play and change the set. So for this to be written so flawlessly, so eloquently, so erudite, in the fact that, yeah, what we're going to do is the spirit's going to lead him forward and just the world will pop up around them. That's mind blowing to me. Um, the spirit stopped beside one of the little knot of businessmen. Observing that the hand was pointed to them, Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk. "No," said a great fat man with a monstrous chin, "I don't know much about it, either way. I only know he's dead." "When did he die?" inquired another. "Last night, I believe." "Why, what was the matter with him?" asked a third, taking a vast quantity of snuff out of a large snuff box. "I thought he'd never die." "God knows," said the first with a yawn. "What has he done with his money?" asked a red-faced gentleman with a pendulous excrescence on the end of his nose that shook like the gills of a turkey cock. One area that I have never seen, so I have never heard much praise in the creative writing community for Charles Dickens in general. I have certainly never heard praise for Charles Dickens in the way that I am going to praise him now. This dialogue is magnificent. And from here, a little farther forward, we're going to see exactly how magnificent it is. Charles Dickens will never name these individuals. Charles Dickens will not give these individuals much description. All Charles Dickens is going to do in this small exchange of dialogue with characters we've never met before, with characters who all have their own personalities in this very short exchange. What Charles Dickens is going to do is give us one thing to look at with each of these characters: the excrescence from the nose, the fat man with the chin. He's going to give us one thing to look at and one thing to listen to. And they're not big things. They're not great big things, but they're enough. They are enough to keep us moving. So I'm going to start at the beginning of that again. "No," said the great fat man with a monstrous chin. "I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead." "When did he die?" inquired another. "Last night, I believe." "Why, what was the matter with him?" asked a third, taking a vast quantity of snuff out from a very large snuff box. "I thought he'd never die." "God knows," said the first with a yawn. What has he done with his money?" asked a red-faced gentleman with a pendulous excrescence on the end of his nose that shook like the gills of a turkey cock. "I haven't heard," said the man with the large chin, yawning again. "Left it to his company, perhaps." "He hasn't left it to me. That's all I know." This pleasantry was received with a general laugh. "It's likely to be a very cheap funeral," said the same speaker, "for it's likely for upon my life, I don't know how of anyone to go to it. Suppose we make up a party and volunteer." "I don't mind going if a lunch is provided," observed the gentleman with the excrescence on his nose. "But I must be fed, if I make one." Another laugh. "Well, I am most disinterested among you, after all," said the first speaker, "for I never wear black gloves, and I never eat lunch. But I'll offer to go if anyone else will. When I come to think of it, I'm not at all sure that I wasn't his most particular friend, for we used to stop and speak whenever we met. Bye-bye." Speakers and listeners strolled away and mixed with other groups. Scrooge knew the men and looked towards the spirit for explanation. The phantom glided on into a street. Its finger pointed to two persons meeting. Scrooge listened again, thinking that the explanation might lie here. He knew these men also perfectly. They were men of business, very wealthy, and of great importance. He had made a point always of standing well in their esteem, in a business point of view, that is, strictly a business point of view. This tells us a great deal about Scrooge. Note that Scrooge here does not say any of these people's names. Scrooge just says, "I knew them. I knew them. Yeah, sure. Absolutely, I knew them. And, I tried to stay in their good graces in a business sense." That is what Scrooge considers knowing someone. That is what Scrooge considers being friendly, knowing someone in a business sense. "How are you?" said one. "How are you?" returned the other. "Well," said the first, "Old Scratch has got his own at last, hey?" "So I am told," returned the first. "Cold, isn't it?" "Seasonable for Christmas time. You're not a skater, I suppose?" "No, no. Something else to think of. Good morning." Not another word. That was their meeting, their conversation, and their parting. Now, this tells us a great deal about the world in which Scrooge operated. These guys know each other. They've met on the street. There are no pleasantries. They just say, well, I guess there's how are you, but they don't, neither of them answer. It's just, how are you for the sake of saying, how are you? They know Scrooge. They speak of his death. That's it. That's the entire interaction. The world in which Ebenezer Scrooge lives, maybe, just maybe, he's not the worst guy in the world, but he's very efficient at being Ebenezer Scrooge. A lot of the observation we get in this novel, Cratchit, Scrooge's nephew, all of these people, Scrooge's sister, all of these people are normies when compared to those in the business world. So we have here, if Scrooge is the big bad, we have the business world being set as his stage. Scrooge was at first inclined to be surprised that the spirit should attach such importance to conversations apparently so trivial. But feeling assured that they must have some hidden purpose, he set himself to consider what it was likely to be. They could scarcely be supposed to have any bearing on the death of Jacob, his old partner, for that was past, and this ghost's providence was the future. Nor could he think of anyone immediately connected with himself to whom he could apply them, but nothing doubting that to whomever they applied, they had some latent moral for his own improvement. He resolved to treasure up every last word he heard, and everything he saw, and especially to observe the shadow of himself when it appeared. For he had an expectation that the conduct of his future would give him the clue he missed, and would render the solution of these riddles easy. He looked about in that very place for his own image, but another man stood in his accustomed corner, and though the clock pointed to his usual time of day for being there, he saw no likeness of himself among the multitudes that poured in through the porch. It gave him little surprise, however, for he had been revolving in his mind a change of life, and thought and hoped he saw his new-born resolutions carried out in this. Quiet and dark, beside him stood the phantom, with its outstretched hand. He roused himself from the thoughtful quest he fancied from the turn of the hand and its situation in reference to himself, that the unseen eyes were looking at him keenly. It made him shudder and feel very cold. They left the busy scene and went into an obscure part of the town where Scrooge had never penetrated before, although he recognized its situation and its bad repute. The ways were foul and narrow, the shops and houses wretched, the people half naked, drunken, slipshod, ugly. Alleys and archways, like so many cesspools, disgorged their offences of smell and dirt and life upon the straggling streets, and the whole quarter reeked with crime, with filth, and misery. Far in this den of infamous resort, there was a low-browed beetling shop below a penthouse roof, where iron, old rags, bottles, bones, and greasy offal were bought. Upon the floor within were piled up heaps of rusty keys, nails, chains, hinges, files, scales, weights and refuse, iron of all kinds. Secrets that few would like to scrutinize were bred and hidden in the mountains of unseemly rags, masses of corrupted fat, and sepulchres of bone. Sitting in among the wares he dealt in by a charcoal stove made of old bricks was a gray haired rascal nearly 70 years of age, who had screened himself from the cold air without by a frowsy curtaining of miscellaneous tatters hung up upon a line, and smoked his pipe in all luxury of calm retirement. Scrooge and the Phantom came into the presence of this man just as a woman with a heavy bundle slunk into the shop, but she had scarcely entered when another woman, similarly laden, came in too, and she was closely followed by a man in faded black, who was no less startled by the sight of them than they had been upon the recognition of each other. After a short period of blank astonishment in which the old man with the pipe had joined them, they all three burst into a laugh. This is so I'm going to make a darkest detail video for Christmas Carol, but it has nothing to do with this. The darkest detail, in my opinion, I'll go ahead and spoil it here. The darkest detail in A Christmas Carol happens with the ghost of Christmas past, where Scrooge is abandoned at school. He's the last boy in school, and his sister comes in and says, "Father has had such a strange change of heart recently, and it is, I think, therefore, worthy of our speculation that perhaps Scrooge's father was visited by these same ghosts. Perhaps this is something that happens to men in his lineage. Might the ghosts of Christmas, the Christmas spirits, be a metaphor for something so miserable as depression, something that seems to be inheritable? Um, but this small scene of scrappers, this is rough. And you really, really, really have to give it to Charles Dickens to go ahead and stick the knife in. But don't just leave it there. Don't just leave the knife in. You got to twist it. You twist the knife and everything gets so much worse. "Let the charwoman alone to be the first," cried she who had entered first. "Let the laundress alone to be the second, and let the undertaker's man alone to be the third. Look here, old Joe, here's a chance, if we haven't all three met here without meaning it." "You couldn't have met in a better place," said old Joe, removing his pipe from his mouth. "Come into the parlor. You were made free of it long ago, you know, and the other two ain't strangers. Stop till I shut the door of the shop. Ah, how it squeaks. There ain't such a rusty bit of metal in the place as its own hinges, I believe, and I'm sure there's no such old bones here as mine. Ha ha. We're all suitable to our calling. We're well matched. Come into the parlor. Come into the parlor." The parlor was the space behind the screen of rags. The old man raked the fire together with an old stair rod, and having trimmed his smoky lamp, for it was night, with the stem of his pipe, to put it in his mouth again. While he did this, the woman who had already spoken threw her bundle on the floor and sat down in a flaunting manner on a stool, crossing her elbows on her knees and looking with a bold defiance at the other two. "What odds, then? What odds, Miss Dilber?" said the woman. "Every person has a right to take care of themselves. He always did." "That's true indeed," said the laundress. "No man more so." Why then don't stand staring as if you was afraid? Woman, who's the wiser? We're not going to pick holes in each other's coats, I suppose. No, indeed, said Miss Dilber and the man together. We should hope not. Very well, then, cried the woman. That's enough. Who's the worse for the loss of the things like these? Not a dead man, I suppose. No, indeed, said Miss Dilber, laughing. If he wanted to keep 'em after he was dead, the wicked old screw, pursued the woman, why wasn't he natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he'd have had somebody to look after him after he was struck with death, instead of lying gasping out his last there alone by himself. That is 5 pages. 5 live from A Christmas Carol. I still got to get used to the live stuff, so pardon me for misdirections. But 5 live from A Christmas Carol for Charles Dickens' birthday. Um, I'm not sure how to wrap something like this up. I've been on YouTube doing this for 9 years almost now, and I have never done the whole live thing. So, pardon me for any bit of awkwardity here, but this is something that I do hope to do moving forward every once in a while. Like I said earlier, I missed a thank you, Leo, for being here. I missed a very important date from World War One. The trench poets are very important to me, and I think that the trench poets. Uh, from what I understand, they have a very large relevance in the United Kingdom, but not so much here. And I think that is sad because of the things that they say. Um, if the Civil War had such a literary tradition as World War One with the trench poets, I wonder how much different, pardon me, that would be. If you have any ideas on Charles Dickens novels that I should read on the channel, let me know. The A Christmas Carol was very enjoyable for me, and I had no idea. I'd never read Charles Dickens before. I was prepared for it to be very stuffy. I was prepared for it to read almost like Jane Austen. Jane Austen, a writer that I really did not connect with. I tried very hard and did not get very far. So yeah, if you have any other dates that you think that I should consider looking into, I just happened upon this being Charles Dickens' birthday. This is not something Charles Dickens' birthday is not something that I know by heart. So if there are other dates that you think are maybe important or of literary relevance, let me know. If there's anything else, let me know. Any questions or anything, any comments or anything. I have no idea what I am doing here, so bear with me. Um, love the shirt. Oh, the sun also rises. Yeah, this was a gift several years ago. I take it you're talking about the sun also rises shirt, not the blue shirt. The blue shirt is pretty standard stuff. Um, I have there are several ideas that I have for literary pun t-shirts. I have crossed the 10,000 subscriber mark, so I am able to get a merch shelf. It took me 9 years to do the live thing. I don't know if I will ever get around to making merch, but um, yeah, a couple different Hemingway titles that I think are very punnable, and I hope to at some point have merchandise with literary puns on it. So we will see how that goes. But uh, I've got a full time job and a part time job, and I'm trying to do this on the side. I'm trying to lose weight. I need to lose weight if I plan to make it to 40. Right, pretty close now, but um, I think that is all I really have. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to more lives in the future. I am hoping to maintain daily uploads all the way through National Poetry Month, which will be April. So look forward to different things there. I am working currently I'm currently working towards having a series for The Great Gatsby start this Friday. It's kicking my butt. I want to do the series for Great Gatsby like I did the series for Christmas Carol, which is a lot of work for someone like me. So, if you are interested in the Great Gatsby, a Great Gatsby, if you're interested in the Great Gatsby, hopefully I can make that series something worth watching. Also, I've been very hard at work on the Darkest series. So if you have not taken part in the Darkest series, it is a playlist on the channel where I go into the darkest element or the darkest work from someone. Alone by Edgar Allan Poe was one. The darkest detail for As I Lay Dying is, in my opinion, the best video I have ever made on this channel. So it would mean a lot to me. I don't think you have to have read the novel for that video to make sense. So if you were interested in that sort of thing, maybe consider going over there. And hey, I hope to have you back for the next one.